The first indication that something had gone terribly wrong came through the emergency beacon crackling across the void. Admiral Zektar's tentacles twitched nervously as he studied the garbled transmission from the Terran colony of New Brisbane. "Repeat that, communications officer," Zektar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had survived 3 major galactic wars. The young Vorthak officer's scales rippled with anxiety. "Admiral, the message is fragmentary, but it appears the Terran settlement has been completely overrun by the Krek swarm. Initial reports suggest total civilian casualties numbering in the hundreds of thousands." The bridge of the GSS Harmony's edge fell silent, except for the steady hum of life support systems. The crew of mixed species, Vorthak, Zilani, and even a few humans, exchanged worried glances. Everyone knew what a Krek swarm meant. The insectoid nightmare had consumed 17 worlds in the past 2 years, leaving nothing but barren rock and the skeletal remains of once thriving civilizations. Zektar's primary eye focused on the holographic display showing New Brisbane's location in the Outer Rim. The human colony had been established only 15 years ago, part of humanity's aggressive expansion into previously unexplored sectors. Despite being relative newcomers to the Galactic Council, humans had proven themselves reliable allies and surprisingly resilient colonists. "Time to intercept," he asked his navigation officer. 47 hours at maximum burn, sir," came the crisp reply from Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun, one of the human officers serving aboard the flagship. Her face remained professionally neutral, but Zektar could see the tension in her jaw. New Brisbane housed nearly 1 million human civilians, including many families of Council military personnel. "Signal the fleet. We make for New Brisbane immediately." Zektar's decision was swift and decisive. "And send word to High Command. If the swarm has taken another world, we need to know their next target." The massive Galactic Council relief fleet consisted of 43 vessels from 7 different species. Battlecruisers from a militaristic Threnody floated alongside the sleek diplomatic vessels of the Zilani. Medical ships from the Peaceful Healing Coalition prepared their trauma centers, while Vorthak assault carriers readied their marine complements. It was a formidable force, designed to either evacuate survivors or exact vengeance for the dead. As the fleet jumped into hyperspace, the crew of each vessel began preparing for what they expected to find. The Krek swarm left no survivors. Their biology made them perfect killers: acidic blood, razor-sharp claws, and a hive mind that coordinated attacks with terrifying efficiency. Worse, they consumed organic matter to fuel their reproduction, meaning a successful invasion could multiply their numbers exponentially within weeks. Dr. Elon Moss, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, had spent years studying Krek's remains from previous attacks. The insectoid creatures stood nearly 3 meters tall, with chitinous armor that could deflect most small arms fire. Their queens could lay thousands of eggs daily when provided with sufficient organic material. The mathematical progression was horrifying. A single scout force of a few hundred could become millions within a month. "The pattern is always the same, Dr. Moss explained to the senior staff during their strategy meeting. The Kreks arrive in massive bioships, deploy warrior castes to overwhelm planetary defenses, then systematically harvest all organic life. They're not interested in territory or resources, only in feeding and reproduction." Admiral Zektar studied the tactical displays showing previous Kreks attacks. "How long does the process typically take? For a world the size of New Brisbane? Perhaps 3 weeks from initial landing to complete consumption," Dr. Moss replied grimly. "The distress signal was received 8 days ago. If the colony has indeed fallen." He didn't need to finish the statement. Everyone understood the implications. 8 days was more than enough time for the Kreks to begin their grotesque harvest and start producing the next generation of warriors. Commander Chin leaned forward. "Sir, I've reviewed the colony's defensive capabilities. New Brisbane had a standard planetary defense grid, orbital platforms, surface-to-space batteries, and a garrison of roughly 10,000 Council Marines. Not insignificant, but Nothing that could stand against a full swarm assault. "What about evacuation protocols?" asked General Throck, the Threnody Marine commander whose troops would spearhead any ground assault. "Standard procedure calls for immediate civilian evacuation to designated safe zones while military forces establish defensive perimeters," Chen replied. "But against the swarm, those protocols are largely theoretical. No colony has ever successfully evacuated more than a small percentage of their population once the Kreks make planetfall." The weight of that statement settled over the room like a shroud. They all knew the statistics. Of the 17 worlds attacked by various Krek swarms, total survivor counts barely reached 4 digits. The creatures were simply too efficient, too overwhelming in their hunger and coordination. "Nevertheless, we proceed with full rescue protocols," Admiral Zektar declared. "Perhaps New Brisbane's defenders managed something unprecedented. Perhaps some civilians reached the evacuation sites. We owe it to them to try." The fleet continued its journey through hyperspace while intelligence officers compiled everything known about New Brisbane's layout, population centers, and potential defensive strongholds. The colony had been built around 3 major cities, connected by a network of smaller settlements and agricultural complexes. Mount Triumph, the tallest peak on the continent, housed the primary communication array and served as the designated emergency shelter for government officials. Captain Javi Restrepo of the human freighter Lucky Strike had delivered supplies to New Brisbane just 2 months earlier. His first-hand knowledge proved invaluable as the fleet's planners identified likely evacuation routes and defensive positions. The colonists were good people, Restrepo told the planning committee via hologram. Mostly farmers and terraforming specialists, but they had spirit. Hell, they threw a festival when we arrived. First supply run in 6 months. Hard to imagine them just gone. "Tell us about their leadership," Admiral Zektar requested. Governor Martinez was former council military, tough lady who kept things running smooth. Colonel Brooks commanded the garrison, also veteran stock. If anyone could have organized an effective defense or evacuation, it would have been those two. The admiral made notes on his tactical pad. Military leadership often made the difference between total annihilation and at least some survivors reaching safety. Professional soldiers understood the importance of buying time, even when facing impossible odds. "Any unusual geographic features that might have provided natural defenses?" General Throck inquired. "Actually, yes." Restrepo's image brightened slightly. "The continent has these massive underground cave systems, limestone formations that go down for kilometers. The colonists use them for geothermal energy and food storage. If people were going to hide anywhere, those caves would be the place." Dr. Moss interjected with concern. "The Kreks are excellent diggers. Their warrior castes can excavate through most rock formations given time." "Yeah, but these weren't just caves," Restrepo continued. "The whole system was partially collapsed from ancient seismic activity. Real maze-like with narrow passages and dead ends. Locals needed guide markers just to navigate the mapped sections. Might slow down even the swarm." This information sparked the first optimistic discussion the fleet had enjoyed since receiving the distress signal. Natural defensive positions could potentially shelter survivors long enough for rescue operations to succeed. The planning teams immediately began developing search patterns focused on cave system entrances and known geological surveys. As the fleet approached the edge of New Brisbane system, long-range sensors began painting a picture of devastation. The orbital defense platforms were completely destroyed, their twisted remains creating a debris field around the planet. Several large bioships, the distinctive organic vessels used by the Kreks, could be detected in high orbit, though their power signatures appeared dormant. "Curious," noted Commander Chun as she reviewed the sensor data. "The bioships should be actively feeding if the harvest is ongoing. These readings suggest they've been inactive for several days." Admiral Zektar studied the displays with growing puzzlement. His experience fighting the Kreks told him this pattern was unusual. The creatures typically maintained continuous activity during feeding cycles, with bioships constantly shuttling resources between the surface and their growing hive complexes. Tactical analysis, Mr. Vorik, he ordered his Vorthack intelligence officer. Sir, the bioship positions are consistent with completed planetary assault protocols. However, their dormant status suggests either mission completion or... Vorik paused, his scales shifting to a confused pattern. Sir, there is no precedent for Krex bioships going dormant during active operations. The mystery deepened as the fleet drew closer. Long-range scans of the planet's surface revealed the expected signs of Krex occupation. Massive organic structures where cities once stood, the distinctive spiral patterns of swarm harvesting operations, and the complete absence of native vegetation. Yet something fundamental seemed wrong with the picture. Communications. Any response to our hails? Admiral Zektar asked. Negative, sir. No response from planetary surface, orbital installations, or the bioships. All channels remain open, but we're receiving no transmissions of any kind. The silence was perhaps more unsettling than screams would have been. At least screams would have indicated life of some kind still existed on the surface. This absolute quiet suggested something far worse or far stranger than anyone had anticipated. Admiral, Dr. Moss called out from his analysis station. I'm detecting something highly unusual in the atmospheric readings. Specify. The chemical composition shows evidence of recent Krex occupation, elevated nitrogen compounds, organic decay signatures, the standard markers. But, sir, the concentrations are wrong. They're too low for an active harvest, yet too high for a recently abandoned world. Admiral Zektar felt his stomach sink as the implications became clear. The Krex swarm had definitely been here. They had definitely conducted their horrific harvest of organic life. But something had happened to them as well, something that left their bioships dead in orbit and their surface operations abandoned. All ships maintain defensive positions, he ordered. We approach New Brisbane with extreme caution. Whatever happened here, we're walking into a situation with no known precedent. The fleet began its final approach to New Brisbane, every sensor array focused on the silent world below. Somewhere on that planet lay the answer to what had befallen both the human colony and their Krex destroyers. And Admiral Zektar had the growing certainty that whatever they found would change everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. The first reconnaissance shuttles launched from the fleet at dawn, New Brisbane time. Admiral Zektar personally led the initial survey team aboard the Swift Current, a heavily armed Vorthack scout vessel equipped with the most advanced sensors in the fleet. As they descended through the atmosphere, the scope of devastation became increasingly clear. Where the capital city of New Darwin once sprawled across the coastal plains, only twisted organic spires remained, the characteristic architecture of Krex hive complexes. The structures rose like diseased trees from the scarred earth, their surfaces glistening with the acidic secretions that marked active swarm occupation. Biosignatures are confusing, reported Lieutenant Kesha, the Vorthack sensor operator. Her scales rippled with uncertainty as she studied her displays. I'm detecting massive quantities of organic matter, but the readings are inconsistent with standard Krex harvesting patterns. Commander Chun moved closer to examine the data. What kind of inconsistencies? The biomass distribution is wrong. In previous attacks, we've observed highly organized sorting, living tissue separated from processed materials, with clear distinctions between Krex biology and consumed populations. This shows. She paused, recalibrating her instruments. This shows everything mixed together. Krex and human biological signatures intermingled in ways that make no sense. Admiral Zektar ordered a closer pass over the main hive complex. The twisted spires that should have been bustling with warrior castes and worker drones stood silent as monuments. No movement could be detected anywhere in the structure, despite readings that suggested massive amounts of organic material remained within. Take us to the secondary settlement, he commanded. Harper's Rest was 40 kilometers inland. Smaller target might show different patterns. The shuttle banked toward the agricultural region where Harper's Rest had supported nearly 50,000 colonists. As they approached, Commander Chen suddenly gripped her restraints. "Admiral, look at the crater pattern." Below them, the landscape was pockmarked with perfectly circular depressions, each roughly 50 meters in diameter and scorched black at the edges. The craters formed concentric rings around what had once been the town center, creating an almost artistic pattern across the farmland. "Those aren't impact craters," observed Dr. Moss, who had insisted on joining the reconnaissance mission. "The blast patterns are too uniform, too precisely placed, and the thermal signatures indicate incredible heat, enough to vitrify soil and stone." "Weapons fire?" suggested General Throck. "Not from any weapon system I recognize," Chen replied grimly. "The energy requirements would be enormous, and the precision suggests targeting systems beyond current Council technology." They circled Harper's Rest 3 times, documenting the strange crater field and the complete absence of any correct structures. Unlike New Darwin, this site showed no signs of hive construction at all. The swarm had clearly been here. Scattered chitinous remains could be seen throughout the blast zones, but something had prevented them from establishing their typical organic complexes. Setting down at the original landing site, Admiral Zektar announced, "Full environmental suits, maximum caution protocols." The shuttle touched down in what had been Harper's Rest Central Market Square. The landing zone was clear of debris, though scorch marks on the surrounding buildings told a story of fierce fighting. The team disembarked with weapons ready, each member equipped with motion sensors and biological threat detectors. The silence was absolute. Even on dead worlds, there were usually sounds, whined through ruins, settling debris, the occasional call of surviving wildlife. Here, nothing moved except the reconnaissance team itself. "Bioscanners show massive organic residue throughout the area," reported Dr. Moss as he took readings. "Both human and correct signatures, but, sir, the decay patterns are all wrong." "Explain." "Standard decomposition should have progressed much further after 8 days. These readings suggest the biological material is somehow preserved, or the deaths occurred much more recently than the timeline indicates." Commander Chun examined a nearby building that had been partially dissolved by Krek's acid weapons. The damage patterns were consistent with initial swarm assault tactics, door and window frames eaten through to allow warrior cast entry, walls weakened to collapse potential defensive positions. "They made it inside," she observed. "Standard Krek's breach patterns. But look at this." She pointed to a section of the dissolved wall where the acid had stopped midway through its work. The edges of the damage showed none of the continued expansion typical of Krek's biological weapons. Instead, the acid appeared to have simply stopped functioning, leaving the building partially, but not completely compromised. "It's like someone turned off a switch," General Throck noted, running his scanner over the incomplete damage. The team moved deeper into the settlement, documenting similar patterns throughout. Evidence of Krek's assault was everywhere. Acid burns, claw marks, the distinctive oval holes left by swarm bioweapons. Yet every single sign of attack appeared frozen at the moment of interruption, as if the creatures had simply vanished mid-battle. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kesha's voice crackled through their communications. "I'm detecting artificial structures beneath the crater field. The explosions appear to have revealed underground constructions." They moved toward the largest crater, where twisted metal beams protruded from the vitrified soil. As they approached the edge, Dr. Moss's bioscanners began registering increasingly complex readings. "Enormous biological signatures below," he reported. "But, sir, these aren't matching any known profiles. Neither human nor Krek's, nor any species in Council databases." Admiral Zektar activated his suit's ground-penetrating radar. The display showed a vast underground chamber, easily the size of a starship hangar. Within the space, his instruments detected massive organic structures arranged in patterns that suggested intentional construction rather than natural growth. "We need to get down there," he decided. "Sir, With respect, that could be extremely dangerous, General Throck protested. Unknown biologics, possible unstable construction, and we still don't know what happened to the Krex. Which is exactly why we need answers, the Admiral replied. Commander Chun, can your people rig descent equipment? Already on it, sir. 20 minutes later, the team was rappelling into the underground chamber through the largest crater opening. Emergency lighting revealed a space that defied easy categorization. Part constructed facility, part organic growth, part something else entirely. The walls appeared to be living stone, smooth and warm to the touch, with patterns of bioluminescent veins providing gentle illumination. The architecture was clearly artificial, yet somehow grown rather than built. Most striking were the massive cylindrical structures that dominated the chamber. Dozens of them, each roughly 10 meters tall and sealed at both ends. Admiral Dar. Moss's voice was tight with excitement and fear. These biosignatures, they're human. The team approached the nearest cylinder. The surface was translucent enough to reveal the shape within, a human figure, apparently preserved in some kind of stasis fluid. But as they examined more cylinders, the pattern became clear. They're all here, Commander Chen whispered. Every single colonist from Harper's Rest. Row upon row of the preservation chambers stretched into the darkness. Men, women, children, an entire community suspended in perfect stasis. The biological readings confirmed they were alive, but in some form of induced hibernation that maintained their bodies in perfect condition. This technology is beyond anything in Council records, Dr. Moss observed as he scanned the nearest chamber. The preservation medium, the life support systems, the neural suppression, it's centuries ahead of our current capabilities. General Throck was examining the chamber's construction details. These weren't built recently. The integration with the rock formations suggests months of work, maybe longer. Someone was preparing for the Krex attack. But who? Admiral Zektar studied the mysterious facility. And how did they know the swarm was coming? Commander Chun had moved to a central control station grown seamlessly into the chamber's organic walls. The interface was unlike any technology she recognized, yet somehow intuitive in its design. As she approached, symbols began glowing across its surface. It's responding to my presence, she reported. The system appears to be active and monitoring. Can you access any records? Attempting to interface now. Chun placed her hand on what seemed to be a biometric scanner. Immediately, holographic displays filled the air around the control station, showing complex data streams in multiple languages, including perfect English. My God, she breathed as the information became clear. It's all here. Complete records of the swarm attack, the evacuation, everything. The holographic display shifted to show a three-dimensional representation of Harper's Rest as it existed before the attack. The underground facility was already complete, connected to the surface by hidden access tunnels. As they watched, the simulation began playing out the events of 8 days ago. Krex bioships appeared in orbit, deploying their assault forces exactly as intelligence predictions suggested. The surface population began immediate evacuation through concealed entrances while automated defense systems engaged the attacking swarm. But these weren't standard Council weapons. The crater field above made perfect sense now. Precision energy weapons had emerged from hidden positions throughout the settlement, targeting Krex warriors with devastating efficiency. The weapons appear to be of completely unknown design, firing coherent energy beams that vaporized anything they touched. Look at the timing, Dr. Moss noted as the simulation continued. The entire evacuation was completed in under 4 hours. That's impossible with standard Council protocols. Not impossible if you've been planning it for months, Admiral Zektar replied grimly. Someone knew this attack was coming and prepared accordingly. The simulation showed the final phase of the battle. With the population safely evacuated underground, the mysterious defense systems systematically eliminated every Krex warrior in the settlement. The precision was surgical. Not a single building received unnecessary damage. Not a single defender was lost. But this was just one settlement, Commander Chen observed. What about the rest of the planet? What about New Darwin? As if responding to her question, the holographic display expanded to show the entire planet. Similar facilities existed beneath every major population center, each connected by a vast underground network. The scope of construction was staggering, an entire shadow civilization built beneath the surface of New Brisbane. How long would this have taken to build? General Throck asked. Dr. Moss was studying the construction details revealed in holographs. Years, maybe decades. This isn't emergency construction. It's a long-term project that required enormous resources and planning. Admiral Zektar felt pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to fall into place. Commander Chun, see if you can access communication records. I want to know if they made contact with the other facilities. Chin worked at the control interface, her movements becoming more confident as she learned the system's responses. New displays appeared, showing communication logs between all the underground facilities. The coordination between sites had been perfect: simultaneous evacuations, synchronized defensive operations, complete tactical integration across the entire planet. Sir, there's something else, Chin said quietly. The communication logs show contact with off-world locations. Other human colonies? No, sir. The coordinates don't match any known council settlements. She paused, studying the data more carefully. Admiral, these communications are with ships, large vessels maintaining position in the outer system. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. This wasn't just a planetary defense network. It was part of a much larger operation involving forces that had been waiting in the darkness beyond New Brisbane's sensor range. Can you establish contact with these ships? Admiral Zektar asked. Before Chun could respond, new holographic displays activated throughout the chamber. A human face appeared, middle-aged, weathered, wearing a uniform that bore no resemblance to any military service in Council records. Admiral Zektar, the figure said in perfect galactic standard. I am Captain Marcus Webb, commanding the Human Defense Fleet Vessel Determination. We've been monitoring your approach, and believe it's time we had a conversation. Admiral Zektar stared at the holographic figure, his mind racing to process this development. A human defense fleet? No such organization existed in any council records, yet the evidence of their capabilities surrounded him in this impossible underground facility. Captain Webb, he replied carefully, I'm Admiral Zektar of the Galactic Council Relief Fleet. We responded to distress signals from New Brisbane regarding a Krek swarm attack. Perhaps you can explain what we've discovered here. The holographic figure smiled grimly. The distress signal was genuine, Admiral. The Kreks did attack this world with a full swarm force. Over 2 million warrior casts supported by 73 bioships. By all standard calculations, every human on this planet should be dead, and the world should be stripped bare. Yet we find the population preserved and the swarm apparently destroyed, Zektar observed. How? Because, Admiral, humanity has been preparing for this war far longer than the Council realizes. What you see here on New Brisbane is just one node in a network that spans dozens of systems. We've been tracking swarm movements, predicting their targets, and positioning defensive assets for over 40 years. Commander Chun looked up from the control interface. Sir, I'm detecting massive ships approaching from the outer system. The energy signatures are enormous. Through the facility's external sensors, they watched as shapes emerge from behind New Brisbane's largest moon. The vessels defied easy classification, clearly artificial, yet incorporating design elements that seemed grown rather than constructed. They moved with the fluid grace of living creatures while displaying the obvious technological sophistication of advanced starships. Impressive, aren't they? Captain Webb's image observed. Humanity's first truly independent fleet. Built in secret facilities throughout the Outer Rim, using technologies we've developed away from Council oversight. Admiral Zektar felt his understanding of galactic politics shifting beneath his feet. You're saying humanity has been conducting military development outside Council authority? We're saying humanity has been preparing for threats the Council chooses not to acknowledge, Webb corrected. Tell me, Admiral, in 40 years of Krex attacks, how many worlds has the Council successfully defended? How many populations has your relief fleet actually saved? The bitter truth hung in the air. Despite decades of warfare, the Galactic Council's response to Krex attacks have been consistently reactive and largely ineffective. They arrived to find devastation, evacuated the few survivors, and mourned the dead. Victory meant limiting losses, not preventing them. The Council's approach assumes the swarm can be negotiated with, contained, or deterred, Webb continued. We've learned otherwise. The only effective response to the Krex is complete extermination. No prisoners, no mercy, no half measures. Dr. Moss stepped forward. Captain, our analysis of the battle sites shows defensive capabilities far beyond anything in current Council arsenals. Where did these technologies come from? From necessity, Doctor. When your species faces extinction, you develop solutions the comfortable civilizations never consider. Webb's expression hardened. We've had first contact with 17 different swarm variants over the past 4 decades. Each encounter taught us more about their biology, their tactics, their weaknesses. General Throck interrupted. You've had 17 encounters? Council records show only 3 confirmed human contacts with Krex forces. Council records show what we chose to report, Webb replied. The encounters you know about were the ones where we failed to contain the threat before it spread. The 14 successful containments never made it into your databases. The scale of deception was staggering. Humanity had been fighting a secret war against the swarm for decades while maintaining their facade as junior partners in the Galactic Council. Admiral Zektar struggled to comprehend the resources and coordination such an effort would require. Show them the real battle, Commander Chin suggested quietly. Webb nodded. The holographic displays around them shifted to show New Brisbane from orbit as the Krex attack began. The initial phases matched what they had seen in the settlement records, bioships deploying warrior castes while orbital defenses engaged in futile resistance. But then, the simulation revealed what the Council sensors had missed. As the Krex forces committed to their planetary assault, human ships had emerged from positions throughout the system. Not the vessels now approaching from the moon, but smaller, stealthier craft that had been waiting in perfect concealment. Phase 1. Allow the swarm to believe they're facing standard Council defenses, Webb narrated. Let them commit their forces to the surface while our real assets remain hidden. The attacking Krex had followed their standard doctrine perfectly. Bioships established orbit while ground forces systematically assaulted population centers. Their assault pattern was textbook, exactly what 40 years of human intelligence gathering had taught them to expect. Phase 2. Systematic elimination of orbital assets. The hidden human vessels had moved with deadly precision. Advanced L systems kept them invisible until they opened fire with weapons that made the underground facilities' defenses look primitive. Krex bioships, creatures that had survived every Council weapon ever deployed against them, simply ceased to exist under the barrage. Those are antimatter warheads, General Throck observed with professional appreciation. But the delivery systems, I've never seen anything like them. Humanity's greatest advantage has always been adaptability, Webb explained. We studied Krex biology for decades, then developed weapons specifically designed to exploit their weaknesses. Antimatter warheads triggered by quantum resonance with swarm neural networks. The bioships literally couldn't detect the incoming weapons until the moment of detonation. Admiral Zektar watched the orbital battle with growing amazement. The human vessels moved through space like dancers, their formations flowing and adapting in real time. The tactical sophistication on display rivaled anything he had seen from the most advanced Council species. Phase 3. Ground elimination. With their orbital support eliminated, the Krex ground forces had found themselves trapped on the planet's surface. The simulation showed the systematic activation of defensive systems that had been built into every settlement over years of careful preparation. We couldn't simply evacuate and abandon the world, Webb continued. Krex biology means any surviving organisms would eventually rebuild their numbers. Complete sterilization was the only viable option. The ground battle had been even more one-sided than the orbital engagement. Krek's warriors evolved for overwhelming lesser opponents through sheer numbers and biological superiority, had no answer for weapons that could track their neural signatures through solid rock and eliminate entire units with surgical precision. But the bioships in orbit, Commander Chen protested. Our sensors detected several large vessels when we arrived. Trophies, Webb replied with satisfaction. We've learned to disable swarm vessels without completely destroying them. The biological components are invaluable for research, and the hulks serve as excellent camouflage for our own operations. Dr. Moss was studying biological readouts from a battle. The preservation chambers, the stasis technology, you've been developing these systems specifically for swarm defense scenarios. Every colony world in human space has them, Webb confirmed. Deep bunkers, advanced life support, weapons systems, communication networks. What you see on New Brisbane exists on over 200 worlds throughout our territory. The true scope of humanity's secret war was becoming clear. While the Galactic Council had been treating Krek's attacks as isolated incidents requiring reactive responses, humans had been building a comprehensive defensive network designed for systematic warfare against the swarm. Admiral, Webb's expression became more serious. Your relief fleet represents the largest concentration of Council military assets to investigate a Krek's attack site. That wasn't coincidence. We allowed New Brisbane's distress signal to reach Council space because it was time for this conversation. You wanted us to find this. The secret war is ending, Admiral. Our intelligence indicates the swarm has identified several major Council worlds as their next targets. The attacks planned for these systems are beyond anything we've seen before. Multiple swarm variants working in coordination, assault forces numbering in the hundreds of millions. Zektar felt his blood chill. Which systems? Vort Hack Prime, Zelanis Central, Threnodai Command. Webb paused deliberately. Earth. The implication struck everyone simultaneously. The swarm wasn't just continuing their random expansion. They were preparing for systematic elimination of every major population center in known space. But you can stop them, General Throck said. It wasn't a question. We could try, Webb replied. But not alone, and not in secret anymore. The scale of what's coming requires full Council military cooperation and access to resources we can't provide independently. Admiral Zektar understood the position humanity was offering. 40 years of secret development had given them capabilities the Council desperately needed, but the coming war would require coordination between species that had never truly trusted each other. What are you proposing, Captain? Full disclosure. We share our technology, our intelligence, our strategic capabilities. In return, the Council provides the industrial capacity and military personnel needed to implement planetary defense networks throughout known space. Webb's image leaned forward. We have 18 months before the coordinated swarm attacks begin. That's barely enough time to prepare, even with complete cooperation. Commander Chun had been quietly accessing the facility's databases during the conversation. Sir, the technological specifications alone would revolutionize Council defense capabilities. Weapons systems, stealth technology, defensive networks, it would change everything. At what cost? Dr. Moss asked suspiciously. What does humanity want in exchange for sharing decades of secret development? Webb's smile was enigmatic. Survival, Doctor. Simple survival. The coming swarm offensive will either be defeated through complete cooperation or will end all spacefaring civilization in this galaxy. Humanity has no interest in ruling over radioactive ruins. Admiral Zektar studied the evidence surrounding him. The preserved colonists, the advanced technologies, the sophisticated coordination of the defense network, all of it demonstrated capabilities that could indeed turn the tide against the swarm. I'll need to consult with Council High Command, he said finally. Of course. But, Admiral, time is not our ally. Every day of delay means more systems remain vulnerable. The swarm doesn't pause for bureaucratic procedures. The holographic display shifted to show star charts marking known and projected swarm positions throughout the galaxy. The pattern was clear, a coordinated offensive designed to eliminate every major population center within 2 standard years. We'll provide your fleet with complete tactical databases and escort you back to Council space, Webb continued. But we need a decision quickly. The infrastructure requirements alone will strain every industrial facility in known space. As Admiral Zektar prepared to return to his fleet, he realized that everything had changed. The humans they had known as junior partners in the Galactic Council were revealed as something far different, a species that had been quietly preparing for a war the rest of the galaxy had barely acknowledged. The relief fleet had come to New Brisbane expecting to find devastation and mourn the dead. Instead, they had discovered that humanity had been fighting for their lives in the darkness for 40 years, developing capabilities that might be the only hope for universal survival. Looking at the preserved colonists sleeping peacefully in their chambers, Admiral Zektar understood that the age of reactive defense was ending. The galaxy was about to enter a war unlike anything in recorded history, and humanity had just revealed they had been preparing for it all along. The question now was whether the rest of the galaxy could adapt quickly enough to survive what was coming.